Righto, welcome everyone. So Maya's probably covered everything in the first hour and 15 minutes, so we'll just top up on that. So just a little bit of background for those that don't know me. Chris Dellavedova from Maryborough. We've got a lamb enterprise and a fertiliser business as well. Not something we'll talk about right at the moment. We'll stay right out of it because it's either going down the Avoca River or there's other global issues going on. So we'll stay right away from that and stay on the lambs. So just, this could be a bit small. I've just thrown the first slide up, so I'll read them out to you. So just as a starting point, the ideas behind today's session, we'll go through some stuff about what we can control and what's important in our operation, and fundamentally what we're trying to achieve with our lamb operation. And this can be extrapolated to pretty much anything else you do. I have stolen this first little bit from Kate Burke, who, if anyone knows Kate, does a lot in the industry with Vic, the Department of Vic, about succession planning and stuff like that. But it's something you can really extrapolate to any part of your life, but we can focus today on your lamb business. Then we'll do a bit on mindset, about your mindset and what it does and what it allows you to do with changing practices within your business. We'll go through some old positive generational habits. We've all got, Maya and Lenny are probably a bit of a needle in a haystack with starting their farm from scratch, and a lot of people are trying to do it, and it's a really interesting thing to see. But a lot of us have got farms that are generational farms, and there's a lot of habits that we have that are positive, that we can utilise when we're trying to leverage forward and in succeeding and taking that next step, and how we can complement and push these positive habits. We'll go into some early weaning. I'll give you an example with some early weaning that we did last year and this year, with the help of Maya and Lenny last year with the day for those that came to last year's day. I'll do a bit of a follow-up on that and some learnings from that. And then what we do post-weaning and how important that is to our operation for animal health, to maximise these genetics that you're working with, and then what that does to your ewe health, which Simon will touch on with his. And then I'll do a little bit on data. My background is done a fair bit with data and other parts of my life previously. But what we can use, there's a lot of data floating around, but to create facts to help make the decision. Don't let the data make the decision for you. So topics to cover, there'll be just six pretty quick ones. Control and importance, mindset for change. I'll go through our operation and what we do. Then early weaning, or I'll put earlier weaning, but you'll understand why when I get to that. Post weaning, and then we'll do a little bit of on data collection, and we'll see how we're going for time. So control and importance. Hopefully you can see that. This is, as I said, I've stolen this with her permission from Kate. It's something that I've used for a fairly long time. It's something so simple that we can do. I have got it here, and I do encourage you to have a go at it, because it's actually a lot easier to do than what you think, but it actually is a lot harder in some ways as well to try and fill all the squares. So there's two sides to it. So we've got control. What have we got no control over? What have we got some control over? And what have we got plenty of control over? And then we can rank them in importance. And that's specific to you. What's very important to you might not be important to someone else sitting beside you. What's somewhat important, and what's really not important at all. So it should be very difficult to find something you have no control over and that's not very important. It'll be something completely off the scale and questionable thinking. So I've just done a little bit, and this is very random, just for this particular example. So rainfall, we've got no control over the rainfall, but it's very important to us. We've got some control over our pricing in markets. When we take those markets, we can't pick the market, but we can choose when we want to sell within that market. We have some control over that. Lamb mortality, you can argue that you've got plenty of control over that, but weather events, to me, can adjust that. And if you've got a tight lambing window, do you have as much control as you think? And is that something that you want to stretch out? By having a longer lambing window or different lambing windows does give you plenty of control over it if you find that really important to you. Animal health, feed budgeting, and mindset, you've got a lot of control over that. And then you just rank them whether they're very important to you somewhat. Long-term weather forecasts, again, no control. Are they important? Yes, they are somewhat important. But following on from Mayer's talk this morning, it's about the cycle. So yes, it's a long-term weather forecast, but how are you prepared to handle those shifts? And is it actually really important to you? Because you can't change it. So if it's going to keep you up at night, have you made the decisions behind it to be able to ride the bump, so to speak, if something happens? And this year's probably a pretty good example of that. If you set your business up in February for an El Nino and got to this point, you'd probably, be kicking yourself a little bit. Pasture growth. And then I've got a few not important ones. And it's a big one for me. And two boys, I've got little brother and one of our staff, Luke, here as well. So they'll get a kick out of this. But we've got plenty of control over timing of low impact jobs. And we've got a wonderful ability to put that timing of low impact jobs. There's particular people within our business that think they sit up here as very important. But it's about managing all those things as well. And then, you've got some control of how things look to others. I don't see that as important. So I have got them here. If you want to do it, I will hand them out for later on or for over lunch or whenever you like. So good operators don't just work harder. They put their effort into the things that they can control that actually affect profit. So following on from that, it's about being able to step back and take the time to not get stuck down on the nitty gritty and the jobs that are not as important, but to actually step back and look at your operation and work on it for a minute and not in it. And it doesn't take that long. Simple things, and Mayer and Lenny do it really well. They're a good example of it, of actually set their goals, and set that process and that planning throughout a season and try and stick to it. If you're just in it, making rush decisions, it can be quite dramatic to your bottom line at the end of the day. So that's the shift. What have we got here? Yeah, so this actually popped up only a couple of days ago. Obviously, 11th of August. I spend too much time on social media, but this popped up and talking about control. You won't be able to see that from the back probably, but the Land had a story on Facebook. Heavy land prices after Tuesday hold above $11 a kilo as processors chase shrinking numbers. You look at that, you've heard 12, 13, and the agents, you work with your agents all the time, and you look at that and you think, oh yeah, it's come off a little bit, but geez, the number's still pretty good, isn't it? We're in a really good industry where there's plenty of money to be made there, and you think, it's been good. And going through some photos, I find this one. So, that's right. The date 24th of October 2024. Now, I think everyone will remember what happened about that time. Things were going through the roof, and we thought, far out, things will never get back to this, will they? Lambs cracked $9 a kilo, amid shortfall. So here we are thinking, setting our businesses for a potential crash and a fall. And yes, don't worry, it's happened. We understand that, the rises and falls. But who would have thought in October 2024 we'd be sitting here at $11 a kilo now? What control did we have over that? Absolutely fucking none, did we? Absolutely no control. But how have we set our businesses and our lamb enterprises to now maximise that? And this is why you do the work right now for later on. You don't do it based on history, but you learn from your history and move forward to take that next step. So I just thought that was randomly just popped up, but I thought it was quite interesting considering where we are right now. So this is going to lead into our operation, and I think this will stick true for quite a few. Mindset for change. Change within your business and doing things slightly differently is, I'd argue, nearly all mindset. It's your want to do it, your ability. Everyone's got the ability to change and do something slightly different. That's why you come to these things these days. But there's so many things that have happened previous that are so important as well. So, standing in your way, sorry. So old positive generational habits, as I call them, all right? They're extremely important to our operation. They're why our operation is where it is now. It's been there to drive progression. But again, following on from Mose, everyone will think we've sat down and gone through it together. It's about that process of sticking to the plan. You plan, you act, you don't deviate from a plan. You follow it through, you review it, you question it, you second guess yourself. And it's how we make that progression through. As soon as you jump off that progression or jump off because you think it's getting too hard, that's your mindset. It's not too hard, it's just your ability to want to follow it through because you think it's getting it's going down the wrong track. You don't want to do it over your whole business, but it's something you can implement. You know, if you've got to start on a small mob or something like that, just do something slightly different and follow it through and measure it, and we'll get into that. You go back through what's worked and why has it worked, and what can we do to change that moving forward, and how can we use it to push on further. So change is what limits progress. So if you don't change, you're not going to progress. You're going to have the same pastures, you're going to have the same sheep, you're going to have, the same cycle every year. And if you're slightly on a negative decline in your cycle, you'll get out of control. It's a bit like a ewe. You wait until your ewes are absolutely skinny as a rake to try and put weight back on them, and you'll never get it back on. But if you've got them in good condition, they're easy to hold there. And we'll go through some of that near the end as well, leading into Simon's. So protect the good habits, complement what works, and then don't let an inability to change limit your progress. So a couple of things, and this is really important as well, because everyone's are different, and it's really important that you know what they are, and when you're doing your planning, isolate them. And there's nothing wrong with sticking to them. Just because they're different to someone else's, it doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that you've got a different focus. It may be, boys at Echuca are going to have a different focus on irrigation than you are on the back hills at Paradise, aren't you? All right, you're going to have different focuses on where your things are. That's bloody hard to see. Are there things in your operation that are non-negotiables? All right. You've got a line of sheep, you shear at the same time, you lamb at the same time. What's non-negotiable in your operation? And stick to it. Don't worry. Don't try and control something you've got no interest in wanting to control. And then pick what you're going to change. What's the goal you're trying to achieve by making the change? What is your ultimate goal? And if you've done your planning, got your goal set, what are you actually trying to achieve? Don't just change for the sake of someone told you to. What do you actually want to achieve at the end of it? Do you want to get your suckers out the door 2 weeks earlier? Do you want your ewes in better health? Do you want to grow more wool? Do you want to get a better wool clip? All sorts of different things. But have that goal in your mind, and how you're going to achieve it by making the change. And are you actually going to change? Have you set a goal? Have you set a goal that realistically would someone tell you should do it? Did you come here and say you should early wean your lambs, but you don't really want to because you've got plenty of feed, etc., etc.? Do you go home and just do it because someone told you to do it, or are you actually going to follow through with it? Are you going to make the change, create the goal, plan it, execute it, review it, and get right through to that final step? Because if you fall off Maya's line of going through those progressions at any point, you may as well not have started down here. So if you're not going to follow it through, Don't get on the horse to start with. Yep. So make sure you actually choose something that you're going to change. And is the change practical for your operation? Review it. Is by making that change, are the labour requirements there to be able to do it? Early weaning for lamb health, ewe recovery. What are your ultimate goals? What are you trying to achieve at the end of it? Because the more you look at that, the more you move your focus away from what you're actually doing. So if you're going to wean your lambs early, and you don't have a goal as to why you're trying to do it or what you're trying to achieve at the end of it, you'll forget about your ewes. And they might be the ultimate goal of what you're trying to actually achieve is your ewe health. And if you're not maintaining them because you're so focused on those lambs that you've got locked up in containment pens and you've forgotten about the ewes for 2 weeks out the back and they ran out of water, what was the point of doing it in the first place? Yep. So don't lose focus on your goal of what you're trying to achieve. So it's the old 7P. That is really small. That 7Ps, proper planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. All right, we've all heard it. We all know it. And it's so true. It's so true in anything you do, but especially when you're running farming businesses on a 12-month cycle and you might have a 5-year goal. You've got to have the plan in place to be able to move through that time and move through that planning. So just our operation, we're going to call it 5th generation sheep farm at Maryborough. Very lucky with our geographic location, etc. We don't have isolated properties everywhere. We're pretty much all in one spot. Does make management easy, does make environmental challenges difficult, and stuff like that. Long-term, fully self-replacing merino and first cross sheep operation. Apart from rams, we haven't bought a sheep onto the place since 93, I reckon. 94, we bought a mob of fine wool ewes from Rook down at Rokewood. That was the last time that a sheep, apart from a ram, was brought onto our place. So it is fully self-replacing. I put a lot of emphasis into being able to push those genetics internally, and that's something that Dad and Pa have done with the merinos for a long time. Is to push those genetics internally. Get rid of your bottoms, exactly what Maya said before, but do it internally. Now that's been a focus of ours for animal health purposes and things like that. And that shifts as you move forward, but that is the ultimate goal, was to avoid any animal health, bringing animal health issues onto the farm. So our focus is primarily a prime lamb producing property. Dad's not here, so I'll mention it. He's got a son that's got a bit of a cropping addiction, which can be a little bit detrimental to the sheep operation. But I can tell you, he's not here. He's bloody happy he's had it this year, I can tell you, with some grazing canola that got shaken out, and the lambs had brilliant feed with an early break. So all prime lamb producing property, and been up to 9,000 ewes, back to about 5,500 now. And really pushing that, really pushing multiples, etc. And trying to find that balance between what we can manage with another business that is priority, and still maintain and have it maintain its own operation within for itself without being topped up with. It only gets topped up with labour and nothing else. So early weaning, I'm going to go into some. We'll get into some pretty specific stuff to our operation. I say earlier weaning, going back to those generational habits. Our operation has been an early weaning operation in terms of the average for over 10 years. We wean early. Everyone knows that. And it's normally because we're running too many ewes per hectare. We've got to get the ewe health. We've got to get the ewes are never in good enough condition, so we've got to get them back out and get them back up so they'll join the next year. Now that's been a shift of ours that we've pushed. And when you're only getting paid for the lambs that go off the farm, you forget the dollars for those other animals that aren't actually, they're making you money, but you don't see it in your bank account. So they fall off that priority list and have on our operation, which by early weaning and going even earlier is a great way of getting that back, and the results show with our lambing percentages. So our weaning is going into some pretty basic shit here, but what we do, we draft the ewes off. We've got staff in the fertiliser business, which we're very fortunate to have. So everyone's trying to spread urea in June and July when we lamb in April. And we're weaning by June, July. Everyone's going flat out with urea. There's rain coming. Dad wants the lambs weaned because they've got to get off mum. I want 4 blokes in trucks to go spreading urea because all you guys want fert spread. So what do? We get everyone on the farm for a day, and we bring in as big a mob as we can. This is the past 10 years. We bring them in, we get the ewes off them, we go, righto, we've got to do everything to them. It could be half shower and rain. We jam the lambs into the shed, run them down the race, drench needle them, get them back out in the paddock. Hopefully, if we can, get them through the scales as well, so we get that first weight. I'm big on getting that starting weight at weaning. Put them out in a 15 or 16 to 20 hectare paddock and say, we're going spreading for a week. We'll come and look at you next week. We'll have lambs in mobs of up to 1,000, and we still do that, but we'd have mobs up to 1,000. When I say to these boys, let's go and move a mob of lambs, they all get sick. They've got sick kids. The dog's left leg won't work today. No one wants to be involved because it takes 4 people. We've got bush between the two. We are separated by bush with no fences, and everyone goes missing. No one wants to be there. There's utes going everywhere, and you've got lambs that are just absolutely going crazy. And one of the reasons for doing it was for the mutton value, to get those cast-for age ewes that we trim off the back gone and get that money rolling in and get them off the farm so they're not eating the grass that we don't have. Anyway, so the positives of our early weaning was lambs get the best feed, reduce the feed cost of the ewes, weaning out of the way in a day. Negatives, pretty obvious, aren't they? When you step back and look at it, it's really obvious, but when you're in it, it's not. Stress on freshly weaned lambs, and what damage does that do to your lambs when you are putting so much pressure and effort into them? You underestimate. Yes, it's stressful on you, stressful on staff, but the stress on a freshly weaned animal, taking a 1-year-old away, effectively a 1-year-old baby away from mum, and throwing them around the hospital, you wouldn't do it, would you? So what do you do with your stock, and what is the long-term effect on that? 16 to 20 hectare paddock, all you get when it's wet is brown lines around your fence lines. They're like single file animals just walking fences, they're not eating. So, huge weight loss. I haven't got any numbers on what weight loss is, but I have seen a few things on Twitter, etc. over the last couple of weeks, and it's a bit scary when people have started collecting the data on how much a lamb does lose, and we'll get onto a return on investment on that in a little bit. And you have a completely unsettled mob for weeks. So you go and put this 1,000 lambs in 20 hectares, and then they start running out of feed, you want to move them, and guess what? The dog's got a fucking sore left leg. The staff is sick, no one wants to move them, you can't get them out of a gateway. They're not mobbed up, they're not happy. And they're not happy, they're a hassle to move. So, last year, and I apologise for this being so small, but 2015, we all had seasonal constraints. We're going, what are we doing? How the hell, we got ewes that aren't coping, looking after a lamb. We've got all sorts of different, ewes not milking, no matter how much, no one underfed a sheep. Everyone was trying to pump as much money into them as they could because they knew what the lamb and the sheep was worth. But no matter what you did, you just really couldn't do. And if someone could, I'd like to talk to them and find out what they did, because no matter what you did, you struggled to do what you thought was right for that animal and be able to get them through.
Not to mention this mothering from supplementary feeding, going in there every day, every couple of days, trying to get as much grain into a twin ewe. You know, you need 120 megajoules a week. That's a fair bit of driving around. Whether you've got feeders or not, you're in there a fair bit. And the lambs are struggling. So we're sitting there going, what are we going to do? And I watched a video from Nigel Kieran up in New South Wales about this early weaning, proper early weaning. I'm going, we already do that. We're all already weaning early. What can we change? What can we do differently that's going to help? So did a fair bit of research, ended up coming up here as well. We'd actually already done it when we came up here as well. And so we pulled the ewes off. We did it a slightly different way. And I'll go through that. Yeah, what are we doing here? What can we do? So our decision was we weighed it earlier. Yeah, when you set the numbers on where we weighed these sheep, your mindset is your biggest limiting factor in this. And Maya and Lenny spoke about it last year. Your mindset on pulling a lamb off the size that it is a challenge. But if you put the information behind it, the rumen development and all the research around it and all the data, how can you make that work on your operation? You've got all the data. The data doesn't pick the structurally wrong ram, does it? But what can you do in your operation to make it work, and will it work? Now, I won't lie, when we did it, you wanted to bail out at times. You wanted to bail out when you've got 8 kilo lambs walking around containment pens on trail feeding them on grain. That was actually a photo from this year, but it's no different because we've continued it again this year. So the process we took last year was draft the ewes off, the lambs, and the biggest change was visually separating smalls and big lambs on the three-way draft and split them down the middle. Take your small ones off one side, take your big ones, and it is purely visual. No weight crates involved, ewes off, lambs separated. We were lucky last year, all the lambs knew what feed was, what grain feeder was, so they were easy to induct. I won't tell you what we did with our induction process because it's far from what you should do, but it worked, purely based on the fact that they were already trail fed. We went to 200 grams straight away, 200 grams of grain feed, and went up between 50 and 75 k from day one. Tried to do that again this year. They haven't had much trail feeding grain. I suggest you don't do it. So we put them in pens, separated, small lambs, big lambs. Feed them accordingly. Make sure they're on the grain. Now these are in acre and a half paddocks, and there's 800 to 1,000 still in these pens. Yep, they're still in big mobs. After 5 to 10 days, we then bring them back in to weigh them and perform the animal health management as we would. But they'd be a week down the track. They'd be a week settled. We'd weigh them into groups, ideally 5 to 7 kilos at that time, and get them down, break them down even further. We didn't have the pens to be able to have them all in there, so we made a decision to put some back out of the paddock and leave some in the pens. Now, some of those lambs from 8 kilos did not see a paddock bigger than an acre until they went on a truck. So they stayed in the feedlot from day one, from 8 kilos. Now, and I'll show you. We'll get into some numbers here.
Just a question. When you're small, medium, large, what's your journey from?
It's a bit of a running joke, but it's a running joke because our grams just keep getting pushed down to whatever's dry. We keep pulling off whatever's inland. But 6 weeks. Yep, 6 weeks. We early and late. So when we scan we will join for 6 weeks, but when we scan them, we will scan them early and late. So technically they, based on visual, within a 3 week frame. So yeah, in the pens. I did have a video, but it didn't work, of 1,000 lambs after a week in pens and how settled they are. Is, if you've done it, you know what I mean. But it is unbelievable, the change. the stress change. Damien's not here, but Damien's been with us for a long time, and he's the first one to get 6 kids when he'd be happy to laugh at it too. He's the first one to get 6 kids when you say, let's go and move 1,000 lambs. You know, when you wean them, throw them a 16 hectare paddock. We did it this way last year, and I genuinely nearly fell over when I said we need to take those lambs out the bush. He said, yeah, right, I'll take them out. I said, who's going with you? He said, oh, we'll be right. Dog and I will get them out, no worries. And the difference in the stress of the animal after 10 days is quite incredible. So, that's the 15th of July last year. 1,300, for those of you who can't see that up the back, 1,318 lambs weighed with an average weight of 17.9 kilos. That was our average weight of that particular run of lambs last year that were weaned early. Now, the critical thing here is those lambs that have been managed the same range from 8 kilos. The lightest one was 8. The heaviest one was 35.4 kilos. So that's the importance of making sure that you separate them when you early wean them, so you don't have the bullies feeding. It's so important to make sure that definitely when they're going back into pens, but they'll push each other around on the grain, on the trail fed grain. So they got split up. They got split up into their groups. We only had a set of three-way scales last year, so we had a up to 15 kilo group, a 15 to 20 kilo group, and a 20 and above group. We just weighed them into 3 lots. And don't tell me, I can't tell you where they went. The 2 heavier lots went back into the pens, and we kept trail feeding the little ones in the last pen. You're not going to see this, so I'll just have to tell you what's on there and you have to believe me. So those big ones that were 20 to 35 kilos on the 15th of July, averaged 22.5 kilos. They went back into the pens on feeders, on feedlot mix, and brought them back in on the 30th of July, re-weighed them. They done 310 grams a day. So what's that? It's going to be 23 days after weaning. They were already up 310 grams a day, and had already increased their average weight to nearly 26 kilos.
That is huge. For context, these lambs are not big. So the amount of food they'll be eating is not a lot. And to grow 300 grams a day, I think, like, how many of you have a lot of lambs? 300 grams a day for, like, that lamb might have eaten, what? 1 kilo max?
Yeah.
That's huge.
So this is when it gets really scary. So they come back in, and I looked at it, but you get stuck in the operation, so you don't really look at it. I'm setting this presentation up, going back through the scales, going back through the data, and I'll pull this out. So they came in a week later. So another 7 days, we brought them back in, and for whatever reason, I don't really know why we did it. I'd love to know, but I can't remember. We brought them back in a week later to weigh them again. Their average gain now, and I'm going to have to check it because I just still don't. Yeah, so their average gain now is 390 grams a day. They've gone up again, right? And you know, like the tops. So the tops of them are up to 450 to 500 grams average. Like some of these lambs put 600 and 700 grams on a day. Now, just for context, when we weigh these lambs, everyone goes, "Lamb, you're really full." Whenever we weigh lambs on our place, they come out of the pen, the paddock, wherever they are, they go into the yards, and they're weighed as quick as we can. There is no emptying out, because I've never had any success, and having the scales and doing a lot of work in the scales, and the agents will be able to back this up probably, the rate at which a sheep empties out is astronomically different. So if I weigh these, and we've done, and you would all probably all seen our lambs go through Auctions Plus the last few weeks. If I weigh these lambs and separate them into groups, and then have to bring them back in within a couple of days, whether it's for an Auctions Plus weigh or whatever it is, it's done on the EID tag. It is not re-weighed. I will not re-weigh it, because the fluctuation you will get in a couple of days, if they've gone in, gone off feed, come in, gone back out, back on feed, is huge. And all of a sudden you start really, in your data, if you're bringing them back in, and you will never get the same number again. The only way to get the same number is pull that data out, pick the ones you want, and graph them that way. So that's how that gets done. Yeah, so they're up to 390 average now. For perspective, the middle lot that were 15 to 20 kilos, they didn't get that first row weigh. There's 570 of them. We bought them back on the 6th of August. They'd gone back out on feeders. They averaged 17.52, I think it was. I'm not going to go back to it. We brought them back in and reweighed them. Yes, the minimum is 12.2 kilos. Some of them have lost weight, and that is a really critical point. You will have some that will be up here, and some that will be down here. If you want to get really technical, you look at your big ones and go, they're doing 450 grams a day. Our lambs are doing 450 grams a day. No, they're not. The bottom group, there's 4 there that are losing an average of 100 grams a day. Right? So 570 come back in on the 6th of August. So again, what's that? 23 days later, their average daily gain is 370 grams a day over that time on average. So by early weaning them, take the stress out of them, get them back on feed. Last year was different. They were already on grain. They were already stressed enough. They could only go one way. They couldn't go backwards. But that's the benefit you got. And to me, that's the biggest benefit for early weaning and the decision you make. So that's just some really random numbers. There's plenty more of them if you want to look at them.
Were they on grain or feedlots?
Feedlot. Yep, they're on a Reed's feedlot mix. Yep. They're on
Did you buy
Reed's.
the mix in, or did you feed your own mix?
I was going to say something, but no, buy it in. Yep. So, and Luke will take this the right way. We've got a lot of different staff that can be thrown anywhere at a time, and I value our time pretty highly. I also value the milk mortality rate. You know, we'll follow that up with about 2,500 lambs we went through the feedlot last year. We lost 12, and 2 of them got run over. So only 10 blew up. I did that in a day this year, but that were the numbers from last year. So to me, and my aim is that's helping your bottom line if you're not losing lambs. So we buy our mix in. Yes, it costs a lot more. Our food costs higher. There's no question about that. I won't argue that with anyone. But Jeremy hasn't been out there for 3 weeks. If I want him to go and fill the feeders, he can go and fill the feeders. Luke, if I told Luke to go and fill the feeders, you just can't stuff it up. So you're not waiting on someone to mix it. It's not our focus, it's not out there every day. So if someone does go out there and something needs to be done, it can be done. And the mix is consistent. So 2026 this year, season outlook looking at $1 million. Ewes are in bloody brilliant condition, absolutely phenomenal condition. They're in good condition when your shearer starts talking about them, when they're always telling you that they're chipping bones previously, and this year they're getting sick of dragging them out. And I'll leave that for Simon to talk about, but that's the benefit. So the benefit to last year, yes, we had a horrible joining because of the ewe condition, so yes, the ewes were going to be ready to go, a lot of them, so take that little factor out of it. But they were primed. They were primed to join. They were primed to land. Everything was going in our favour, while everyone at the bottom, sitting on $100 million, was telling you that the season was going to flip on its head, and everything's looking pretty good. So we push on. Lambs are flying. We get to the same date. We get to about the 15th. It was earlier this year, but yeah, first mob got done on about the 4th of July. We're looking at them, driving around the paddock going, what do we do? We might just leave these lambs. We might just leave these lambs on mum and sell them to suckers. So, again, what do? We've got a fair bit of feed. We're looking at the market going, what do we do with these things? Can we start getting contracts? These things are going to be already a month earlier than they normally are. What do we do? Do we leave them? Do we let them go? We look at the learnings from last year and go, we already know what to do. We wean them out. We get them in and we wean them. Because we all know, after 15 kilos, lamb doesn't have milk. It's all about gut development. It's all about the capillaries and everything in in the gut, in the rumen, and I won't go into the nutrition side of it, but it's all about the contact sites for absorption of feed, whether that is grain, whether that is grass. It's all about the animal development is what pushes those lambs to the next level. Just because they're walking around with mum at the same height, it doesn't mean that you're doing the best for the animal, or their gut is developed the best possible. Yes, it might be for a second cross lamb that you're selling off the farm, but it's pretty important if you've got first cross ewes that you're trying to breed and merino ewes that you're trying to breed, that their gut health is set up for life. It's not set up for that 12-month period. It is set up with your planning for the life of that animal. So what do? We went early. So we bring them in. We did do it a little bit differently this year. The lambs were a fair bit bigger, so we did weigh them straight away for a number of reasons, but needled and injected them. And again, the video won't work, but we had the VE machine set up on the front of the scales, and then just had them run off the VE machine straight into the scales and draft them off the way they needed to be done, just to get their initial weights. Look at the date, 10th of July 2026. Same lambs, same sort of contribution, different policy. So these are the same lambs, joined the same time, used joined the same time, everything joined the same time. Last year, 1,318, average 17.9 kilos. This year, have not done anything differently to this point. This is the climate effect that you have no control over, absolutely none whatsoever. 731 animals, average weight of 31 kilos. They're nearly 14 kilos heavier than the same time last year. So where does that change your mindset for what you're doing moving forward? You know, these lambs are actually a saleable item. Last year we couldn't sell them. You can't sell an 8 kilo lamb. We're getting 50 a pound on the truck now. We would have got nearly 100 a pound last year, but no one wants them. So what do we do with them? Have a look around, make a call. Right, we'll just start selling them. So they started selling. So just to put it in perspective, we sold our first lamb on 22nd of September last year. And by the 22nd of January, we'd sold 2,500 lambs off the farm. They've been through the feedlot, etc. And go back to Mayers when she put this in there for me. The gross margin versus return versus income. So happy to discuss it because everyone can see it. But 2,500 lambs, 22nd of September, 22nd of January last year. Sold an average of $267 in that time frame. This year, during the same time, we've, as of Tuesday, sold 2,500 lambs already by the 13th of August. So 5 weeks earlier than we sold our first one last year for an average of $239.50 going off the farm. So now the question is, how do we get our ewes? How do we get the weight off our ewes walking around on grass? Because if we've got all this grass that we've had for years for lambs, what do we do? So that's the next challenge. Post-weaning for these lambs, I just want to go, I'll read it out to you because you won't be able to see it. Management outcomes post-weaning. Our biggest one, our farm is very heavily supplementary fed for a number of reasons. Again, it's a decision we've made long term. Our management outcomes are maintain grain background in printing at all times. Our lambs need to be ready. You look at the long-term forecast, it's moderately important to us, to our business now, but if it falls off a cliff getting into this time of year, are we ready to go if all of a sudden we get a week of 35 degrees at the end of September, which is highly likely in an El Nino year that they keep telling us we're going to get? And I think that's a really important thing to remember. I will make that point. El Nino isn't dry, El Nino is heat, is warmth. 10% of El Nino years are above average rainfall. We're in one of them right now. So it still potentially could tip over and we could get some heat in the spring. So are we ready? We're on pretty light country. If we get a week of hot weather, we've got no feed pretty quick. So it's really important to us that the lambs are ready to go. If they've got to go back into that feedlot to finish the last of these lambs off, they're ready to go. So they need to stay imprinted. Everyone goes, why would you do it? You've got grass everywhere. So growth rates through the weaning process over that 2-week period taught me of the weight loss you can have trying to imprint lambs back on the feed, and we'll go through it based on that number over there. We can use our ewes now for spray graze pasture, the spray grazing pastures. Can't get on and spray them at the moment, but when we can, we'll be able to utilise them and clean them up ready for next year. Again, setting up that 12-month process. We reduce the feed cost of the ewes, the lambs get the best feed, and again, the lambs, the ewes gone, to the cast for age, we've got the mutton value added. Grain maintenance, return on investment, just a few numbers and we're going to go through them. That return on investment is $4.03 a head on our lambs at the moment. Equates to 16.9 kilos of barley with a 2.11 average. We'll go through in a second. Live weight gain and $9.94 head carcass value. All about know your lamb weights earlier and use the data to create the facts and make decisions and make them and stick to them. So I'll just go through this working example of when it comes to grain and what we're feeding our lambs and ewes when we are in a situation like we are now. Last year it was no brainer. It's probably not. It's probably more of an on the fence decision at the moment. And actually, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but every grid I've ever seen, once we get to September or October, generally drops 10 cents a kilo a week. It might not do it. It might stay steady for a week or two, but it will generally drop when anyone puts a grid out. You've got to allow 2 weeks to fully imprint, and I'm talking about if the season does shut off. This is just an if, but, or maybe. Allow 2 weeks to fully imprint grasslands onto full grain diet, assuming no weight loss gain. Sorry, no weight gain or loss. You know, you go into that with a hopefully hold them mindset. Barley is, say, $3.50 a tonne fed. That's probably a little bit light if you value your labour. Minimum kill weight carcass is 20 kilos. Meat yield of about 44%. These are just things I've assumed in the calculation. And again, do whatever you like. Barley conversion to live weight gain 8 to 1. Some people would argue that's too low, some people would argue that's too high. With a meat value for, and I used the first week of October at about 10.70. So grain maintenance post weaning versus return on investment. If you don't imprint, they continue the imprinting of those lambs, and you've got to put them in there and teach them how to eat grain again and get their gut sorted to then go onto a high grain diet, you're going to take 2 weeks. 10 cents a kilo on 20 kilo lambs, $4, you're going to lose just by imprinting those lambs and missing that sale window by 2 weeks. So that $4 at 35 cents, bear with me, try and bear with me, at 35 cents a kilo for your barley, that pays for 11.4 kilos per head of barley. Just that 2 week drop in value of a 20 kilo lamb, so you're 24, even higher. And I'll use the assumption that you need 5.5 kilos per head for a 2 week induction. That is not going to gain or lose you weight. It's going to be pretty much cost neutral. So that's 16.9 kilos of barley just to get it back in print that you could use in print them. Supplement feed 16.9 kilos per head at 400 grams a day, which a lamb on grass at the moment is not going to eat 400 grams of barley a day unless it's guts, but they're not going to average that much. You can supplementary feed those lambs for 42 days, which is pretty much now to the end of September for nothing. Right? You turn that around and say that's 16.9 kilos of barley that you're feeding them and supplementing them at 35 cents and an 8.1 conversion costs you $5.90 a head. In that time, at 8 to 1, you're going to get a 2.1 kilo live weight gain at 44%. Meat yield at $10.70 a kilo. You're going to get $9.94 carcass value on that animal for nothing. Just by keeping your lambs imprinted, that's the value you're going to return. That barley has cost you $5.90. So your head investment, your return on investment, to talk about return on investment, this is only a 1%er. But that's a $4 a head return on investment for a $5.90 cost. If someone said to you, you could get a return on investment of your canola crop by 75%, would you take it? I probably would. So they're the little numbers you do. The mindset says we don't need supplementary feed grain. The weather's telling us something could happen. Do we believe it? Do we prioritise it? It doesn't matter. If you do decide to prioritise it, you do your numbers, and that's what happens. And you go, shit, I actually get a return on investment. How we going for time, Mark?
Probably going alright.
Right, this won't take long. So number 6, data collection. It's a bane of my existence. I've done it for over 15 years of previous jobs at John Deere and etc. like that. The biggest misconceptions with all this data is it actually fucking useful? Like, what is it actually? Data to Simon is going to be different to data for Jane. Alright? It's going to be, data is different. Important data is different for Holty and McKean McGregor and Ash at AWN. It's different for me. Right? There's so much out there, you've got to work out what's important to you. And are you actually going to use it and utilise it? Or do you just trust Mayer and Lenny that the ASPVs and Simon that the ASPVs are right and all their data's in there, and you get educated on what they mean and don't worry about the data and pick it and utilise what's important to you and just let the data happen in the background. Because if you saw what they had to do or started out to do with data entry, you'd flip out. It's from a commercial flock. So what do you have in your operation that already collects data? You used to do this with headers all the time. People drive headers around and they'd never be able to give you a yield map out of it. You go into it, make a hero out of yourself in about 15 seconds when no one's actually collected the data. This has been happening for 15 years. Are you even looking at it? Are you using it? Is it important to you? What can you do with it? We've all got stuff that collects data, even in the sheep operation. How do you record that data? Most important thing with data, and once you isolate whether it's important to you or not, how do you utilise it, and how do you record it so it means something? You've got to make sure that anyone can go back to it and pull it out and make sense of it, because if it's too complicated, or if you're using something that's too complicated, it's the first thing that gets thrown out. If it's too hard, you won't do it.
Well, collect the data that's relevant. I think
100%.
like, none of us here work at CSR and know how to run a trial properly, but it's very easy, like, we hear people that want to run their own trials on farm with 2 different brands. So they join it for 2 different boxes of use. They land them in 2 different paddocks, and then they treat it totally differently, these lambs, and then they run them in a lane, and they compare that data. This brand may weigh heavier than that brand. But you can't actually compare that data against each other, because they're different what we use, different paddocks, different circumstances. The lambs, they were ran together under exactly the same environment. You can't compare it. So you need to be really criticise your own data, and can I compare it against each other? Is it relevant against each other, or is it actually leading you astray?
Critique could be the word rather than criticise. Critique the data.
Critique the data, that's it. The other thing with data that's really important, and it's something I have learned over time, the data might not necessarily that you're collecting, that your farm is collecting, may not be important to you right now. You may have no interest in the data right now, but I can tell you, in 5 years' time, if you haven't collected it properly and you decide you want it, fucking painful when you know you've been collecting it, you can't find it, or it's not there. It's really important that you think, future-proof yourself, and what do we actually want to achieve? And machinery is a little bit different, but it can be extrapolated into stock as well. And how do we use that data to help make informed decisions based on what you can control? So you don't let the data make the decision for you. You don't walk into a ram sale. I was going to run through a little bit how I buy rams, but you don't walk into a ram sale and sit at home and get the catalogue and just bid on the ones that, if you look at the ASPVs and they're important to you, just bid on that bird. You actually go and look at the animal. So don't let the data make the decision for you. Use the data to help you make the decision. It's a really important difference. So that's about it. Any questions? We'll do them later. Okay, thank you.
Oh, thanks a lot, Chris. We're gonna let Simon have a chat, and after that's lunch, boys are out preparing it. We can close this one.
Here you go. No, maybe? Still got your battery left.